20 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to drop this week in a big week 20 for many owners. The first guy, Brandon Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays. It's very surprising. He's still owned in 71% of fantasy leagues here is Lowe, and he really hasn't done much of substance this season. 8 home runs, 25 RBIs, 31 runs scored, a stolen base, a 234 average, and a 319 on base. It's very hard to believe last season, 39 home runs he had and 99 RBIs, and he's nowhere even near that or going to sniff that, obviously, with a month left of the season. So the last couple weeks here for Lowe, no home runs and RBI, 2 runs scored, a 208 average, and a 387 on base. So the only thing he's pretty much brought to fantasy owners this year is obviously the on-base percentage, and I know he's banged up early in the year and struggling as well when sent down to the minor leagues. But this guy, after hitting pretty much 40 home runs last season, to coming back in this year and doing nothing is a big problem, obviously, for him. And they don't even play him every day, so to be owned in 71% of fantasy leagues is very surprising to me. August 19th versus the Royals, 0 for 3. August 21st versus the Royals, 2 for 3 with a run. August 22nd versus the Angels, 0 for 1. August 24th versus the Angels, 1 for 3. And August 26th at Boston, 0 for 1. So right now, he's not getting the playing time. He's not putting up numbers. And there's just no reason for Brandon Lowe to be on fantasy teams, and especially over 70% of leagues. So he's a very easy drop this week. The next guy's Jared Walsh of the Los Angeles Angels. So Walsh, last season, a solid year was for him, 29 and 98. And this season, he totally went backwards. And now with the season-ending injury here, with the TOS here, which he said he's had a couple years, and we've seen it ruin pitches, Thoracic syndrome. That's what could happen here to Walsh. So this season, he finishes the year 15 home runs, 44 RBIs, 41 runs scored, a 215 average, and a 269 on base. So right now, this Angel team, a lot of injuries this season, a lot of struggles, and a lot of inconsistencies, and that's what we saw with Jared Walsh. But obviously, the outlet syndrome is what held him back this season. That's why the numbers have been down, because he's been a pretty solid fantasy contributor the last 2 or 3 years before this season as Walsh. Obviously, dynasty leagues and keeper leagues, he's not even a guy I'm going to bother to keep after a down year now with this injury that could obviously linger for a couple months here for Jared Walsh, or even into next season. So right now, Jared Walsh out for the year. Numbers are down, not producing, a lost season for the Angels, and he's a no-brainer hitter to drop this week. The next guy is Jorge Mateo of the Baltimore Orioles. So Jorge Mateo, it's been a solid year for him for the most part. He's owned in 70% of fantasy leagues and has great versatility, second short and outfield in fantasy on the year. We know he's on fantasy teams because of his stolen base prowess. 12 home runs, 43 RBIs, 28 stolen bases, 52 runs scored, a 230 average, and a 277 on base. But over the last couple weeks here, he's not doing anything. 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a stolen base, a 217 average, and a 250 on base. So right there, that's not going to get the job done. A 250 on base is horrible, no doubt about it here from Mateo, and that batting average is even worse. And if his specialty stolen bases and he's not doing it, there's no reason for fantasy owners to hold on to him. August 23rd versus the White Sox, 1 for 3 with a rib in a bag. August 24th versus the White Sox, 0 for 3. August 25th versus the White Sox, 0 for 4. August 26th at Houston, 0 for 4. August 27th at Houston, 1 for 3. And August 28th at Houston, 1 for 3. So right here, best, he's getting a 1 for 3 day at the plate. Here's Mateo. He's stealing bases barely because he's not getting on base. And right now, he's not a guy I'm going to wait around for, especially in crunch time here in the fantasy season. So right now, I would drop him. And if you need stolen bases, it's maybe a category you got to give up, because it's definitely a lost art in baseball and obviously fantasy baseball. And right now, he's not worth the guy to hold on to just because he steals bases, is Mateo, in my opinion. The next guy is Jeremy Pena of the Houston Astros. So Pena, he came up and got off to a good start the first couple months of the season. But the last month of the season, he's a guy that just can't do anything, and hitting under the Mendoza line on the season, 16 home runs, 45 RBI, 7 stolen bases, 52 runs scored, a 242 average, and a 282 on base. So those are pretty decent numbers, home runs, RBIs, and stolen bases for obviously a shortstop, which is a weak position in fantasy baseball. But over the last month of the season, he's done nothing. 1 home run, 7 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a stolen base. And over the last 2 weeks here, even worse, a homer, 4 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 140 average, and a 174 on base. So right now, I don't know why he's still only 53% of fantasy leagues. I know he's got power, but he's not even getting on base or hitting for average at all, or even showing the power is Pena. So right now, no reason to hold on to him as well. August 23rd versus Minnesota, 2-for-4. August 24th versus Minnesota, 0-for-3. August 25th versus Minnesota, 1-for-4 with a rib. August 26th versus Baltimore, 0-for-3. August 27th versus Baltimore, 0-for-1. And August 28th versus Baltimore, 0-for-4. So right here, he's in a bad slump. He's not getting anything going, is Pena. And right now, just cut your losses if I'm a Pena owner. And the final hitter I look to drop this week's Jose Miranda of the Minnesota Twins. So Miranda, he was a hot pickup a few weeks ago, and he's had a pretty decent season coming out of nowhere here for this Twin team. 13 home runs, 56 RBIs, 32 runs scored, of stolen base, 272 average, and a 314 on base. But the last couple weeks here, he really hasn't done much either. 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 3 runs scored, a 255 average, and a 291 on base. And right here, he's a guy that swings early in the count. He's a free swinger, and pitchers are starting to attack that, where they're getting Miranda to chase some breaking balls in the dirt and really struggle, and not a guy who's going to have patience or a great eye at the plate. And he's swinging at junk and swinging early and getting out early here is Miranda. So right now, the last few games here for him, August 24th at Houston, 0-for-4. August 25th at Houston, 1-for-4. August 26th versus the Giants, 1-for-3 with an RBI. August 27th versus the Giants, 0-for-5. August 28th versus the Giants, 1-for-4 with a run and a rib. And August 29th versus Boston, 1-for-2 with 2 runs. So I know he's in the meat of the order here, batting third or fourth for this Twin team. But right now, he's not getting the job done. And I think the league's caught on to him with more tape, obviously, on him and more sequences, how he attacks in that bat and a pitcher. So that's a few hitters I look to drop here for Week 20 of the fantasy baseball season.